Jerry's Song by DeVille. Isolation becomes the man who yearns for others, who longs for company. Why does he want others around? To hear his songs, his stories? Long nights he has weathered all by his lonesome, but unable to live with himself, he eats, he takes up drink. And finally someone worthwhile comes along and he scares them away. Not with malice or stupidity, but with the proverbial bugs crawling through his matted mane. The odor of loneliness can be smelled on the cleanest of men, and he knows that. He knows where he stands in the world. Jerry Bartholomew III sat in his small apartment contemplating his yesteryears with a forlorn look out his window, which had pellets of rain sliding down its framed pane. He decides to clean. He starts with the garbage. He then folds his clean clothes and sets aside the dirty pile. He then does some laundry and pours out the remainder of his cheap spiced rum. He does this for nobody. He only wants to prove it to himself that he can be better. Suddenly he gets a knock at the door. "Who is it?" he asks, still getting over his tendency of paranoia. "Name's Smith, Wilma Smith," a bright-sounding lady answered. Jerry opens the door and sees a tall, beautiful woman wearing a sundress, holding a large canvas bag full of books. "How can I help you, Miss Smith?" "I am from the Every Child Should Read Foundation, seeing if anyone has any books to donate. We also accept cash, but are glad to take any books off your hands." "I'm afraid I lost all of mine in the flood, ma'am." Jerry was telling her the truth. "But I love a good cause, and I happen to have a spare $1. Let me go get it." Jerry quickly went to his dirty pile of laundry and fumbled out 4 quarters for Miss Smith to add to her educational charity fund. She went on her way to the next house in her lovely sundress as it blew in the late spring winds under her umbrella. Such a beautiful woman, Jerry thought, and she's trying to raise funds for a cool cause. I'd be lucky to settle down someday with someone like her, so bright, so beautiful. Oh, snap out of it, he scolded himself. It didn't do Jerry well to dream of such fantasies. Jerry knew his place after all. His family was mostly gone, save a few estranged cousins, and all he had to occupy his time was an antique fiddle. It was an ancient old thing that sang pretty, and Jerry would play it for hours on end for no ears other than his own. The apartment was getting muggy with the rocking washing machine clunking around and sloshing hot water, and the dryer likewise blowing humid air out into the small space. Jerry went to his balcony wishing he hadn't poured out his rum, yet proud of himself for doing so. He said aloud. He thought about his old book collection at the bottom of the Tennessee River, dissolving with each crawdad flipping their wet pages. He had but $22 to his name and decided to finish his laundry after a good walk somewhere. He did not know where he was going to spend his money, just that he wanted to leave the apartment complex and breathe in some stormy air. He had his own umbrella ready after he put some socks and boots on, locked up the tiny apartment, and went for a stroll. He found an ice cream store, a bicycle repair shop, and he had no use for either one. but betwixt the two stores was a library. He went inside without thinking. And who would have thought but the sundressed Miss Smith herself was behind the counter, counting books and keeping tabs. "Why, hello," she said to him. He tipped his hat, then quickly took it off out of respect for the old decaying building. He walked through the poetry section. He found Chaucer, Poe, Whitman, Dickinson, the classics, until he found one book with a dandelion on the cover written by a Samantha Harris. He flipped it open and read a few lines. "How great his art which never fades, in sunshine, moonshine, each turning page, each tree-lined path of creeks and shade, man builds iron fences in his jealous rage. How great his art from sky to deepest cave, oh, the songbirds know in their whistling raves, and should I ever know how to be saved, as some feathered thing whose world I crave. How great his art, which man has bombed, whose precious pastures have been trampled on, for trenches and rotting the soil to clay. Man is the destroyer of his art to fade." Jerry looked the lines over and over and wished he hadn't started crying many tears in the library. Sniffling and deciding to check the book out, he looks up and wipes his eyes with his sleeve. He turns around to see Miss Smith right behind him. "A poetry fan?" Yes. Sorry, I can get touched easily by stanzas," said Jerry, embarrassed. "Not at all," Miss Smith replied. "You have 30 days to return it or check it out again, Mr. Bartholomew, but call me Jerry. I'll have it read in 2 days, most likely." "So what do you do for a living?" she wondered aloud to him. "Retired fiddler. Lost my home in a flood, and I get a royalty check once a month." "Oh, neat. My pa was a musician." She smiled her charming smile, which faded as she added, "Sorry about you losing your books and everything to that darn flood. Must have been awful." Jerry then did the strangest thing a man could do in his position. He mustered up courage. He told himself, "If I don't do this now, I'll never be happy." So he asked Miss Smith to coffee. "I get off work in an hour," she smiled in her answer. Jerry said, "Great, I'll be back then." Isolation became a man who had enough of himself but to wear his own clothes, drink from his own cup, and be by his own self for so long. He finally had made a wonderful friend. Isolation seemed to fade from Jerry's life. Pretty soon, Wilma Smith Bartholomew and her new husband raised enough funds to double the inventory of the library, while starting a few programs for the neighborhood. And in the midst of his joy, Jerry woke up from this dream, faced again with mean old Mr. Isolation. None of his laundry had even made it to the machines, his bottles all full of hard liquor. But he knew what to do. "I think I'll write some songs," he said to himself. He dedicated some stanzas of fiddled-back lyrics to the fictional Miss Smith and the made-up poet who lived in the back of Jerry Bartholomew III's mind. He played his fiddle mournfully. He remembered the flood that took his home and his former wife with it. How she looked so much like his wife, the lady of his dreams. She may as well be leaning on him now as he penned down some words for his next hit single. Guess I better pour these bottles out and start some laundry, he decided. The storm came a-raining, the clouds hovered a-crackling. He played his fiddle and wrote and did his chores. He only had himself this time to rely on. Nobody else could save him, he said to himself.